One summer, I went with my friends Sarah and Emily to spend the weekend at my parents' country house. We decided to have a traditional bonfire party in the woods near the house that evening. The weather was great at first, clear starry sky, and a light breeze. We lit the fire, got out snacks and drinks. The fun and conversations lasted about an hour. But then the weather suddenly turned nasty, strong winds picked up, and it started to drizzle. We realized it was time to head back to the house, but we were in no rush, stretching out those last minutes of the party. When we were finally ready to leave, I glanced at my watch. It was already about 2 in the morning. And then the wind suddenly died down, and there was a roar, like the sound of a passing jet plane. I looked up at the sky. A whole squadron of glowing, unidentified flying objects, moving in strict formation, was crossing the night sky. They looked like plates or discs emitting bright light. The squadron flew silently past us. I couldn't believe my eyes and thought, well, here we are seeing this, and tomorrow we'll think it was all just a dream. Sarah and Emily were also looking up at the sky, their mouths gaping in astonishment. We exchanged glances, not knowing what to make of what we'd seen. One thing was clear: we needed to get back to the house urgently. We quickly put out the fire and strode through the woods towards the house. With every step, it got darker and more creepy. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up from the sense of someone's intent gaze behind me. We picked up our pace and soon saw the lights of the house ahead. But the relief was premature. As we got closer, we saw that the whole house was immersed in darkness. All the windows were shut, not a glimmer of light. Sarah tried to open the front door, but to no avail. It was locked. I knocked on the door and rang the bell, but no one responded. Strange, my parents were clearly home when we left for the party. Where could they have disappeared to in the middle of the night? In a panic, we ran around the house, peering in the windows. Inside was dark and no sign of my parents. My heart sank with a sense of foreboding. Something sinister was going on in this house. And then behind us, we heard soft, shuffling steps. Someone was approaching us through the pitch blackness of the woods. We froze in terror, unable to move. The steps sounded very close, and a black human figure emerged from the darkness. It was my father, but his eyes had a glassy, absent expression. He slowly approached us, holding out his hands. My mother followed behind him, shuffling and dragging her feet in the same strange trance. We were struck speechless with horror. What had happened to my parents? Suddenly, Sarah grabbed my hand and pulled me away into the thick woods. We broke into a run, stumbling over tree roots. Emily fell behind, and her cry of pain echoed through the forest. But Sarah and I didn't stop, fighting our way through the bushes until we burst out of the woods onto the edge, where we could see the lights of the highway in the distance. What happened to Emily and my parents, I still don't know. Sarah and I ended up in the hospital, where passing motorists had brought us. The doctors tried to calm us down for a long time, but no one believed what we told them. The police thoroughly searched the woods around the house, but found nothing suspicious. Since then, I tried not to think about that ominous evening, but I often have nightmares, waking up in a cold sweat. Whatever it was, it changed my life forever. Months after the incident, I was still depressed and anxious. I decided to change my surroundings and went to study in another city. But even there, the nightmares haunted me, featuring my parents and the flying objects. One night, I had an especially vivid dream, as if I was back in those woods by my parents' house. But this time, I decided to go inside, which I had been too afraid to do that fateful night. I opened the door and found myself in the dark hallway. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper, "Help, us." I turned around and saw my parents. They looked pale and emaciated, looking at me pleadingly. "Free us, please. They whispered in hoarse voices. I didn't know what to do, but instinctively reached out to them. At that moment, there was a deafening crack as the windows exploded into a million shards and strange shadows burst into the house. I woke up in a panic and realized I had to go back to that house and find my parents. It was a sign. The next day, I bought a ticket and arrived in my hometown early in the morning. The house looked abandoned. The door was unlocked. I went inside and looked around. No one. But something told me to go down to the basement. Descending the creaky stairs, I heard faint moans. In the corner of the basement lay my parents, emaciated and pale. Empty canned food tins were scattered around them. They had survived all this time locked in the basement. I rushed to them, crying with relief. But suddenly their figures seemed to dissolve into the air before my eyes. I saw it with my own eyes. It couldn't have been my imagination. I fell to my knees in despair. And at that moment, I heard a faint whisper coming from all directions. Leave. The voices sounded as if from another world. In horror, I ran out of the house and never returned there again. Were they aliens or something supernatural? I don't know. But I know for sure. It was them who took my parents from me that fateful night.